Hey there, Internet friends. Trevor Starkey here from TrevorTrove.com to wrap up my E3 2017 coverage with a rundown of my top 10 games of E3 2017. These are the games that I saw at E3, so some of the things like Far Cry 5 aren't going to be on this list because I didn't actually get to play or do like any kind of deeper dive into it. You can read a more thorough, in-depth kind of breakdown of all these games in the link in the description below over on TrevorTrove.com. So I'll give kind of the abbreviated version here in the video version. Up first, I want to look at the quote-unquote honorable mentions. I only really saw 13 games at E3, so I figure I should at least give a little bit of a nod to the 3 games that didn't make the top 10 list. Those 3 would be Harvest Moon, Light of Hope, which is a new game in the Harvest Moon series that feels a lot half-baked right now. It did not feel good to play. The main issue I had with it is that they've kind of oversimplified the game, and instead of having to swap out a hammer and an axe and a hoe and all the tools, you've got one action button that, based on the space that you're about to do any kind of work in, it does whatever you need it to do. And I was like, why is that it's not fun. The second game is a game called Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. This wasn't on my radar or anything, but Alex Van Aken of OK Beast asked me to check it out while I was there because he saw it and thought the art style looked cool. It's a perfectly competent 2.5D side-scrolling hack-and-slash kind of game, but nothing really stood out at me. The only element that really jumps out is the fact that the girl's scarf basically gets used as a hookshot for kind of traversing the platforming, or you can use it to like whip out and grab an enemy and then throw it back, or throw the enemy around. So it was fine, but nothing hugely stand out. And then the last one was Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age, and I really only played that because I was walking through the Square Enix booth and there was an open station. It's Final Fantasy XII, so if you played it, you know what you're getting. It doesn't look amazingly remastered, but I admittedly wasn't comparing it to an actual PlayStation 2 copy of the original game, so it might just look better in my memory anyway. But it looked more like a PlayStation 3 game than a PlayStation 4 game. They did give me the thing that I basically want from any of these kind of remasters since Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 4 did it, in that they gave me a rush mode where you can just push the L1 button, I think it was, and combat goes like twice or 3 times as fast, so you can kind of rush through the game if you know the story already and you just kind of want to get the experience. You don't want to have to spend hours and hours and hours grinding. You can do it at a much quicker pace. So I much appreciated that. I'll probably pick up the game to give Final Fantasy XII another shot. It's always been one of those that ranks pretty low on my list of Final Fantasy games, but it could have just been kind of where I was at that point in my life, so we'll see if it's worth taking another look at. So with those out of the way, we move on to the actual top 10 list. Number 10, Knack 2. Maybe I should just do this as a top 9 list and screw this one. Knack 2 is more Knack. If you liked the first game, unironically, then you're going to be getting more of that. The co-op in this one feels very much kind of shoehorned in. The other Knack isn't seen in any of the cutscenes. You can beat each other up, which ended up being a hindrance for me and the random stranger I was playing with, because we were trying to punch a boulder, but we ended up constantly punching each other, and so the boulder would then plow over us and we'd die and have to restart the area. So not a fan of that element. Yeah, I hated the first Knack, so I don't like that they made a second one. That really annoys me, and this is just more of it. Number 9, Days Gone. Now, I didn't go hands-on with Days Gone, but I did get to see kind of the extended alternate demo behind closed doors, and it surprised me. It definitely looks like it's more in the vein of like a Horizon Zero Dawn, but with a biker club instead of with robot dinos. I'm of 2 minds of it. One, I'm like, do I really need a game that looks that similar to Horizon Zero Dawn? But then I think, well, I really loved Horizon Zero Dawn, so the gameplay of that game was great, so maybe getting my hands on with Days Gone will be great as well. Number 8, Matterfall. This might have been higher on my list if I were more of a fan of the Housemarque games, but ultimately, in kind of the grand scheme of things, I enjoy them, but I'm never going to be the kind of person that's chasing a top score for these kinds of games. Still fun, great graphically. It definitely plays with all the voxels and the destruction on screen that Resogun played with. It's definitely more Resogun than Alien Nation, I think, and yeah, I think it'll be a great game when it comes out. The control scheme is a little iffy for me. Having your R1 be your jump and L1 be your dash, that took some getting used to and will still take some getting used to before I'm finally comfortable with it, I'm sure. But it's a fun game. I'll enjoy it for probably a weekend or so, play through kind of the main campaign, and then probably be done with it at that point. But still, I'm looking forward to when it comes out. Number 7 is a game called Desert Child, which I forgot to cover in my Day 3 roundup of everything I played at E3. It was the only game I really played over in the Indiecade side of things at E3, and I didn't know until after E3 was done that Devolver Digital was there and had a whole indie section outside of the conference proper, so that's why I don't have more indies on my list. But Desert Child, it's a 2D side-scrolling racer, 16-bit era-ish graphics. You're basically playing a guy and his motorcycle, and you're racing through the map going like this, and things are constantly flying at you from the other side of the screen, so you have to shoot them or the opponent that you're trying to beat in order to kind of cross the finish line first. And then in between races, you have to manage things like your hunger level or your bike's repair level or the amount of money you have or the amount of guns you have, effectively. And there's a great risk-reward factor there. So like the guy who made the game told me to basically sell off all my gun units for cash, which I then used to bring my hunger and my bike damage level down to 0. And so in doing that, when I went into the next race, my gun, because I'd sold off all my gun units, was more like a pea shooter than like a big old cannon like it had been in the first race, and I didn't have as much ammunition. But because my bike was in a good place, my boost lasted longer, and because my hunger was in a good place, it also recharged faster. So I was able to kind of move around the course quicker, even if I couldn't shoot things as proficiently as I could in my first match. So it all comes down to kind of finding that right balance for your own playstyle as well as the kind of mechanics of the game. It was a lot of fun. I'll be interested to see where it goes. Right now it's a PC-only kind of game, but it might end up on one or more of the consoles in the future. Number 6 was Everybody's Golf. Outside of like the original Nintendo Golf and like the golfing minigame of Grand Theft Auto 5, I've really not been much into the golf kind of game. It just tends to be a little too slow for me, but this was very quick-paced, and the idea of being able to play against multiple opponents, either computer or friends online, all kind of at the same time. You're just kind of rushing through the courses simultaneously. Seems like a lot of fun. It could just be a good fun game to kind of unwind to. I also like that there's like a level progression to the game, so I'll feel like I'm improving my character as I get more and more comfortable with the game. Ton of fun. Something I look forward to kind of just dropping in and unwinding to after a long day at work. Number 5, Marvel's Spider-Man. The only reason this doesn't make it probably higher on my list is because it wasn't a hands-on demo and it has a nebulous 2018 release date, but I got to sit front row for the behind closed door demo of this. And hot damn, does Spider-Man look really, really good. I'm sure it was like a 4K projector screen or something like that, but it looks really, really sharp. The demo, as I touched on in my previous video, had more fights kind of interspersed throughout the demo that we saw at the Sony conference, so that really broke up what people kind of deemed as the overused QuickTime event aspect of the game. It looks like Arkham Combat, but with a lot more environmental weapons that you can kind of thwip at and whip around to your enemies. So I'm looking very forward to that one, but again, it's probably still quite a ways away. It'll probably still be at next year's E3. Number 4, and my biggest surprise of E3, was Dino Frontier. This is a game that I was encouraged to check out by my roommate for part of the trip, Dustin Furman, and he'd played it at PlayStation Experience. So when I got the opportunity to sign up for one of the demos from the Experience PlayStation app, I went ahead and chose this game as opposed to trying for something that was in much greater demand like Battlefront or Destiny 2. Dino Frontier is right in my wheelhouse. It's a great kind of god simulator game where you're playing the god character and you've got your hands in the world, which are basically connected to your Move controllers in VR, and you can use them to kind of grab at the world and pull yourself in or push yourself out for the zoom functionality, or you grab the world and like move the world to you as if it's like a diorama. And you're building up a settlement, and the whole aesthetic of the game is Wild West meets dinosaurs. Games like Black and White or Populous back on the PC were some of my favorite games of their genre, of their period, and this looks right at home kind of in that company. And being able to be immersed in VR is something I will absolutely work to get my VR station kind of back in an up and running setup so I can enjoy that game. Number 3 is Detroit Become Human. Much like Spider-Man, this was another game that wowed me right off the bat with its visuals and how good it looks, how good like the facial animations look, and how well they kind of fight against the uncanny valley of character models. As I touched on the other day, the demo I played was the hostage demo that we saw at last year's E3, where you're playing as Condroid, an android hostage negotiator, kind of called out to the scene where some deviant android has kind of gone rogue and is holding a child hostage. So the demo is basically in 2 parts. Part 1 is you're kind of investigating the penthouse apartment to try and fill in the blanks and identify what might have caused the android to break and kind of do some detective work, and Connor has a very detective mode kind of scene reconstruction element, just like we saw in the last couple Arkham games with Batman, where you can analyze an item on the ground, and Connor can kind of recreate the scenario as to like what led to that final image, and you can rewind it and discover oh, this thing went over there, and so you can then look over there and now you see that there's a thing there and you can kind of investigate that, and all of this, everything you do feeds into a probability of success monitor percentage that's kind of just ongoing. And then part 2 is the actual hostage negotiation conversation with the android, and you can use the aspects and the information you gleaned from your investigation inside the house outside as you're talking to this android. And so it very clearly shows you a couple of like things that unlocked because you discovered that information. And so it was a really tense trying to figure out when was appropriate to kind of slowly walk towards the guy and not kind of spook him, as well as when I needed to lie to him, as well as when I needed to kind of submit to some of his requests. Really tense, really great. I went out into the conversation with like a 70 to 75% success rate. I ended up successfully saving the girl and getting what the booth workers kind of deemed as the optimal solution, which I felt really good about. And then I felt even better about it when later that night somebody was telling me that they saw somebody go out with like a 99% chance of success and still manage to fail in the conversation. So it definitely seems like everything kind of plays a role. It's not just like you can go out super prepared, but if you say the wrong thing or move at the wrong time, the guy will still either jump off the building or shoot the girl or whatever the case may be. I look forward to seeing more of this game, and the sci-fi element of humans versus androids and what does it mean to be human is right in my wheelhouse in terms of like sci-fi storytelling and the themes that I want to see in my science fiction. So looking very forward to this game when it comes out. Number 2, Super Mario Odyssey. Now, the game immediately feels like a return to Super Mario 64 or Super Mario Galaxy games, in that you're entering into a world and you've got a whole bunch of things to collect in that world. In this case, it's moon shards. You'll hop into one of these worlds and there will be kind of immediately by default highlighted, here's an objective you can go to, but you also have kind of free reign to explore the rest of the area, the rest of the map. So you can go do side quests, or you can go collect the 100 unique world coins that are in each different world. Movement and platforming feels good, as you would expect from a Mario game. I think it will feel better for me when I'm not having to use Joy-Con controls to do it. I much prefer a button prompt to having to move my hands like this to do like some kind of spin attack. Just give me buttons to do that. I don't want to do this unless I'm like in VR and like pulling myself into a dino world, because then it's fun. But when I'm just waggling to spin Mario around, I can do without that. God, Nintendo, stop trying to make, like, motion controls a thing. Demo was about a 10-minute demo, and I had a great time with it. It's going to be a great game. I have no doubt about that. Probably one of my favorite elements of it is that you can kind of go into pipes that will kind of put you up into a 2D plane. So you revert into 8-bit Mario to do some of the platforming and puzzle solving in 2D. And you can buy outfits in this world that also transform into 2D Mario. So I watched as somebody else bought like the fedora nice New Donk City suit, and then they took it into 2D, and sure enough, it's not Mario in his overalls, it's Mario in a 2D fedora and suit. The game seems like it's going to have unlockable upgrades, a la like the metal hat or the wing hat of Mario 64, because in my demo, I played the desert level demo, and I stumbled upon at one point kind of a hidden path up on some pillars where I could just kind of walk in midair from one pillar to another. And I later found out that, yeah, eventually you'll get something that allows you to see the actual hidden path. Because I was trying to go to like a hidden shard up there, but the path was not direct from one pillar to the other. It was probably like circuitous, and because I couldn't actually see the hidden path, I did not end up finding my way. So the best part of all of this is that it's going to be a Switch game, so I can plop it up on my TV, or I can take it on the go, and it'll probably be like my most played thing at PlayStation Experience this year. So, yay for Mario. Looking forward to when that comes out. It's going to be good. And number 1, South Park: The Fractured Butthole. South Park: The Stick of Truth was one of my favorite games the year it came out. It's probably still in my top 5 funniest games I've ever played because of how crazy and irreverent the humor is in that game. The demo here blew me away in how much they're kind of improving upon and building upon and making more gamifying the game. South Park: The Stick of Truth was funny, but it was also a nice little RPG. And South Park: The Fractured Butthole is really amping up every element of it. So the humor is more in your face and more grotesque, as evidenced by the fact that you're playing through a strip club in this demo. And if they're showing that in a public demo, who knows what's in the real game? The combat is more improved. The environmental puzzle solving that you have to do is bigger and grander than the original. So I was mostly impressed by how much above and beyond they're trying to take this second game. The reason it takes my top spot over Mario is because I expect Mario to be good. For better or worse, I know what to expect from a Mario platforming game, and this seems to be delivering on that so far. I did not expect South Park: The Fractured Butthole to try and go above and beyond in every element of its original gameplay. I figured they would try and do more of the same as well, but they're really trying to say, okay, well, what did we like about the first game? Let's do 110% of that in this new game, and let's do more, and let's do better. And in the 15 minutes I spent with the game, I was impressed by just how much of that they're working into this. I don't know if we'll actually get it this October or if it'll be delayed again, but I look forward to playing it whenever it comes out because it's going to be a ton of fun. It's going to be, I had a non-stop grin on my face, and I can't wait to dive back into South Park. So those are my top games from E3. As I said, you can find a more in-depth rundown of those games at trevortrove.com using the link in the description below. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. You can see more of my E3 thoughts on this channel or through Trevor Trove. And until next time, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.